What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome back to the TheSlamDuncan YouTube channel. I decided to now finally talk about this very minor deal made by Karnisovas and also the Wizards and the Celtics. It was a three-team deal that had a lot of moving pieces around, but it was definitely a very minor deal at the trade deadline, which I thought was going to be more of what Karnisovas would be doing, but he decided to not only do this, but also make the humongous blockbuster deal to get Nikola Vucevic. But I want to talk about this deal because while it is very minor, and there's a lot of pieces that aren't very big, that they're not going to be starters or anything, I really want to talk about how good of a trade this is for the Bulls. It may not look like it on paper, but this is a very good trade for the Bulls. I am recording this on Saturday, so today we get to see most of the new guys for the Chicago Bulls suit up, except for Daniel Thies, unfortunately. But I am very excited to see this new Bulls team play together, and I'm hoping that this new Bulls team can get into the playoffs. Hopefully at least get the 6th seed, maybe even better than that. But before we get into this, though, make sure you hit that like button if you're new to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get into this. I want to talk about the moving pieces, so what went out and what came in, and I'm just kind of just go through it like one by one. So initially, it was reported the Bulls and Wizards had a deal. It was going to be Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchison for Luke Kornet and Mo Wagner. And that was the initial, or I'm sorry, Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchison for Mo Wagner and Troy Brown. I apologize. But that was the initial reported trade, and I was about to make a video on that trade, but then all of a sudden, right when I was about to make that video, more stuff came out, and all of a sudden it was a 3-team deal, so I had to wait. But in that just initial trade, though, for Gaffer, Hutchison for Wagner, and Troy Brown Jr., I still think that was a great trade by Karnisovas, because if you think about it, right, we traded a guy, Hutchison, who has barely played this year for who knows what reason, for Troy Brown Jr., and Troy Brown Jr. is younger than Hutchison. He's only 21. He's at least played more games than Hutchison this year, but last year, especially in the bubble for Troy Brown Jr., he had a really good bubble last year. And then this season, he hasn't played as much, but we know that Troy Brown Jr. is a really good defender. I also think he's a pretty good ball handler as well, but he's just going to be a solid role player, but we at least know that he's healthy and he's going to be he's an actual serviceable player, unlike Chandler Hutchison, where we just don't know what's happening, right? And then with Mo Wagner, he started a couple games, or maybe even multiple games for the Wizards this year. But Daniel Gafford's a guy that's in and out of the rotation, right? So, with Wagner, you're getting 3-point shooting, getting rebounding, probably no defense, but you know that you're getting a guy that's more playable than Gafford, right? But then all of a sudden we heard about the 3-team deal with the Celtics getting involved now, and it just got even better because, in my opinion, Daniel Thies is a better player than Mo Wagner, and Daniel Thies for this Bulls team is going to be perfect because if you think about what happened with this Bulls team just in one day at the trade deadline, right? We changed our center rotation from being Wendell Carter Jr. and Daniel Gafford, the main two centers, right, to Nikola Vucevic and Daniel Thies. Daniel Thies has been a guy that has been mostly starting in the most recent years, as you can see. He started for the Boston Celtics last year, and this year he's mostly been starting as well. I apologize about the ads, by the way. But he's a guy that is a starting caliber player, and we're going to have him, most likely, in my opinion, come off the bench. He's going to be the backup to Nikola Vucevic, and I think this is perfect because I can just imagine lineups with Daniel Thies as he's a very good paint protector. I wouldn't call him a rim protector, but he knows how to protect the paint very well in any sort of defense. He is undersized at 6'8" for a center, but he understands how to protect the paint, especially in a team level defense. We're probably going to see more blitzing when he's on the court for the Bulls, so it's going to be a much different defensive look. But the main thing with Daniel Thies is that he is going to be, instead of starting, he's probably going to be coming off the bench, and I think he's going to probably be playing most of his minutes alongside Markkanen. And while I do think Markkanen is going to be starting still for the time being, I do expect Markkanen to be playing with the second unit more, and then Thaddeus Young is probably going to be ending the game at the power forward position. But Daniel Thies is a very, very good player. It is interesting to see that the Boston Celtics decided to get rid of him, but it looks like it was more of like a tax thing for the Boston Celtics. And great job by Karnisovas to realize that and snag Daniel Thies for at least this season. The Bulls do have early bird rights on him, and if we can have Daniel Thies as our backup big man, that's perfect. I love Daniel Thies. I think he's a very, really good role player for any team he's really on. But one thing that's very underrated about Daniel Thies is him in the pick and roll. He has mastered this ability to set a screen, but then also be able to box out and basically set another screen for whoever's handling the ball and try to get to the rim. He's basically mastered the double screening tactic, and it goes very unnoticed, but he does it so well. It's something that Brad Stevens and him really developed while he was in Boston, and I love the fact that he can do such a thing. But he is also a guy that is working on his 3-point shot. He can take those, but he's obviously not a guy I want shooting the 3 all the time. I had one person ask me, do you think Theis might start next to Nikola Vucevic? I don't see that happening. I personally do not see Daniel Thies being in the starting lineup at all unless Nikola Vucevic is out. But I love the fact of the idea of Daniel Thies being our backup big man. Because, just think, Wendell Carter Jr., Daniel Gafford, Nikola Vucevic, and Daniel Thies. We just upgraded our rebounding drastically, but we also upgraded our paint protection as well. We got much bigger, so our rebounding is going to be so much better. But Daniel Thies is a very good paint protector, in my opinion, and I think Bulls fans are going to love Daniel Thies, and I hope he stays around. I don't know if he's going to be able to be on this team next year, especially because we're already, as you can see, the cap situation has changed drastically. We went from $72 million for next year to now $99 million. So it's going to be definitely harder to keep him, but we do have his early bird rights, so it's going to be interesting to see with him. But great move by Karnisovas because we traded Luke Kornet and Mo Wagner basically for Daniel Thies. That's such a big win for the Bulls. Now I want to talk about Troy Brown Jr. I love Troy Brown Jr. And again, just doing the comparison, right? We basically traded Chandler Hutchison for Troy Brown Jr. All right. By the way, I don't know why so many people spelled Hutchison's name wrong. There's no N after the I. But Troy Brown Jr., I said before, he's a really good defender. He had an incredible bubble last year, but as you can see, last year he averaged 10 points per game. He started a lot more games, obviously. But this dude, I think, has a lot of potential just to be that really good role player. But again, just think, you traded Hutchison, who was not playing at all this year, and we don't know why. Troy Brown Jr. is 21 this year, and he hasn't played a lot, probably just due to the fact that he's on the Wizards team that's really trying to win right now. And I think he can come in and take those Valentine minutes that a lot of Bulls fans don't want to see anymore. One problem I have with Denzel Valentine, and as much as I part of me likes Valentine, but the other part of me, I'm like, I can't stand watching Valentine. But I think Valentine has an issue of understanding what his role is. There are times, especially in the second unit with Valentine, where he thinks that, I got to be the main scorer. I got to take as many threes as possible. I got to be the guy to score the ball all the time. Well, that's just not the case, right? But Troy Brown Jr. is a much better defender than Denzel Valentine. He's a much bigger player as well. I think he's a pretty good ball handler too, which we're not going to really see. We haven't really seen that recently, but I do think he's a pretty good ball handler. But main thing for me is that he is going to come in and be a much better defender, and he could probably turn into a 3-and-D role player. But I'm hoping that this 3-point percentage goes up. He shot pretty serviceable last year, but this year has not been that good. But also, he has not played in that many games as well. But I still think this is such a good move by Karnisovas because you're trading a guy who has obviously not been playing at all for you this year for a guy that has played at least 20-plus games, but is probably going to be better than this dude right here and can also slide into that rotation pretty easily. Now, last guy I want to talk about is Javonte Green here. A lot of Bulls fans don't know who Javonte Green is. I accidentally tweeted out saying that he was on a 2-way deal with the Celtics. I found out that was wrong. I thought he was, and I apologize. But Javonte Green is a dude that I've always liked. I've seen him a lot in Summer League. I've seen him play in a lot of preseason games for the Celtics. But this is a dude that is very scrappy. He's a really scrappy type guy that is going to... He can handle the ball a little bit, but at the very least that when he steps onto the court, he's going to be a scrappy dude. So he's going to defend very well. He's going to definitely get into guys' faces, and he can also handle the ball, and he's pretty explosive to the rim. His shooting obviously needs to be worked on, but I think that's something that a lot of guys need to work on in the league. He is 27, so it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of Bulls fans are thinking, this guy's young. No, he's not that young, but at 27, he can definitely develop into something. I've seen a lot of Bulls fans, they were starting to say, hey, look, Javonte Green can take those Denzel Valentine minutes that we don't want to see anymore. Honestly, I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't really see Javonte Green really being in the rotation at all, at least for the early part when we're trying to figure out everything, and especially because Al-Farouq Aminu, who I have not talked about at all really, Al-Farouq Aminu has been so injured, so in my head, I'm always thinking, we're not going to have Al-Farouq Aminu be available to us, but he has been healthy recently, so just due to the fact that I know that Al-Farouq Aminu is healthy, I sincerely doubt we're going to see Javonte Green play at all, especially this year. I really don't see it, but, in the upcoming years, maybe, and He is, I think, let's see. So he is on a non-guaranteed deal, which I think has become guaranteed now. But if we do sign him, he's not going to take that much money to re-sign him. But I do like Javonte Green. I think he is a player that can come in and just bring, be like a spark off the bench if nothing's really going too well. Think of him as like an Arcidiacono who can come in and just bring the defense, but also, he's like an explosive guy to the rim. So, as you know, with Arch, he's not obviously explosive to the rim, but Arch is more of a shooter, right? So, just think of him like that. It's a very small role with Javonte Green, nothing that big. But main thing I want to talk about right now is just how different the rotations look, especially with the new guys. Specifically talk about Daniel Thies and Troy Brown Jr. here. So we sent out Daniel Gafford, who was in and out of the rotation, right? Luke Kornet wasn't getting any minutes. Chandler Hutchison wasn't getting any minutes. Wendell Carter Jr. Was then put on the bench, but now obviously he's gone as well. So the big man rotations look a lot different right now. And in my head, I'm already kind of planning on how Donovan's going to be ending games. He's probably going to be ending the games with his veterans. So again, I said earlier, I expect Thaddeus Young to be playing alongside Vucevic the most at the power forward spot, but I do expect Larry Markkanen to start. But main thing here is that Daniel Thies and Nikola Vucevic, just these two guys together, they're going to take so much pressure off of Larry Markkanen now. Now, I will say, I am actually shocked that Larry Markkanen has actually stayed on the team. I thought he was for sure gone at the trade deadline. I'm still very shocked that he's actually on the team right now, but as you've seen in my previous videos, and even in my straight up just my one video that was solely for Larry Markkanen, I do not think Larry Markkanen's going to be on this team next year at all. And it's not just due to fit, because I don't think him and Vucevic fit very well together, as they're both not known as defenders, and they're both 7 feet, so it's kind of like there's going to be a bit of a logjam there. But I also just think for the Bulls moving forward, if they want to, especially this upcoming offseason, to make a big move, Markkanen's probably not going to be here just due to, one, salary, but number two, he's probably a trade piece for a sign and trade. So I just don't expect Larry to be here. But for the time being, I do think that he's going to benefit from playing next to Nikola Vucevic and Daniel Thies specifically, because Daniel Thies is going to take so much pressure, as he's going to take the biggest guy on the floor because he's the center. Markkanen then just has to worry about being Markkanen. He doesn't have to worry about guarding a big man, right? And Daniel Thies is obviously a better rebounder than Markkanen as well. So I think just having those two together like that, it looks much better. And if anything, Daniel Thies will be the box out guy. Then Markkanen can get the rebound, as he's 4 inches taller than Daniel Thies. So that's how I'm looking at the big man rotation right now. Troy Brown Jr. definitely brings in something interesting, because he obviously fixes one of the biggest issues right now with the Bulls' perimeter defense. I can definitely imagine him playing alongside Levine at the small forward spot, and then maybe even have Patrick Williams play the power forward at some moments. But the Bulls can definitely have a very lengthy 2 through 4 that can switch everything, and Levine and Troy Brown Jr. and Patrick Williams, or you can even throw in Garrett Temple in that lineup as well. Like, that sort of lineup definitely brings a different aspect to what the Bulls have not had, which is they have a lot more perimeter defenders now, and a lot more size, a lot more length. So it's good to see with Troy Brown Jr. that he's going to come in, and I think he's really going to get minutes, probably over Valentine, and I honestly also hope he plays over Arcidiacono. Now that Garrett Temple is back, as much as I love Arch, I think Arch can only be played in spot minutes and not every single game. So Troy Brown Jr. is just bringing in that wing depth that we have not had all year, really. So good to see there, and I talked about Javonte Green. Now, last thing here is the point guard or the guard spot. So it is going to be interesting to see, because Troy Brown Jr. is definitely, he is a wing player, so he can definitely play the 2. Or, you move Garrett Temple up to the 2 more, instead of Garrett Temple always playing small forward. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what Billy Donovan does with his rotations now with Troy Brown Jr. in the mix. I hope Valentine is not in the rotation anymore, because I just think that he has not played very well at all this season. A lot of people will disagree with me on that, but a lot of people will also agree with me on that. So it's definitely interesting to see there. But one thing that Cardinals shows did not do at all this in the trade deadline, which is very shocking to kind of see, is that the point guard position is still the same as is before the trade deadline as it is today right now. So it's like the point guard position didn't upgrade. And that being said, it's going to be interesting to see how Donovan uses his lineups now, because we have not upgraded the point guard position, but you're probably going to have to see Kobe White not play at the shooting guard position as much as well. because we only really have two like actual point guards that can play at that position. I don't want Zach to be playing at the point guard spot because I think that actually hurts the Bulls a lot. But adding in Troy Brown Jr., it does, kind of force Kobe to actually have to be the PG off the bench because we don't have the luxury right now to be like, hey, let's throw in another point guard so that Kobe can slide over to the 2, as now we have more wings that have to play right now. Because while Otto Porter Jr. is out, but he was more just strictly a forward, we add in Troy Brown Jr., who's going to be playing the 2/3, so Kobe White is definitely going to have to start, manifesting himself to be just strictly the point guard, right? Unless we're playing Arcidiacono with him, which honestly, I don't think that works, and I don't know why we would do that, but, I'm not the coach. I'm not Billy Donovan. But kind of an interesting thing that Casey Johnson just recently tweeted out here as I am recording this on Saturday, but Casey Johnson talked about how with Billy Donovan that he's not going to be like really thinking so hard about the rotations just yet, but he needs to have a practice with all these guys to kind of see which lineups work the best. So the rotations, as you see right here, are going to be very different. They're going to be fluid. They're not going to be set rotations. They're just, so what we're going to see today is probably not what we're going to see on Monday, right? So expect Billy Donovan to be kind of, playing around with the different guys, we're probably going to see Levine and Troy Brown Jr. play together tonight, but maybe the next game we won't see it at all. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see that, but I think just adding in Daniel Thies, adding in Troy Brown Jr., these are two really good defensive guys. Like, these guys are going to really help, whether it is the starting unit or the bench unit. It brings a whole different, level of intensity on the defensive end for the Bulls. And you can add one of these guys to raise the level of defense for whichever lineup you want to. And especially that bench unit, these guys are going to help that bench unit so much. As once Sato and Young went to the starting lineup, which I think Theis Young is going back to the bench, but once those guys came out of that bench unit was struggling, right? But Troy Brown Jr. and Daniel Thies, they're going to definitely help that bench unit raise its level because, man, just think, again, Daniel Gafford was the main guy off the bench, the main center off the bench. Now it's Daniel Thies. Absolute upgrade. Love it. And then Troy Brown Jr. is probably going to replace Denzel Valentine. That's, to me, an upgrade as well. I do want to talk about the guys that did leave in this trade for the Bulls. Luke Kornet, I don't really want to have to say too much about Luke Kornet. Jim Boylan called him the white Robert Horry, and I think that's just an absolute... man, I don't want to talk about that. But Luke Kornet. He's a shooting guy. I just thought that he overlapped with Markkanen too much. Both are not good defenders. Both are 7-footers that shoot the 3 ball. It just doesn't make much sense to me at all. I'm kind of shocked that we even brought him in the first place, but it's whatever. Hutchison, I have to say I'm very disappointed with Hutchison. I actually like that pick by Garpax. I really liked Hutchison. I watched all of his college highlights and stuff. I thought that he can come in, especially after what we saw in the preseason this year, that he can come in and he can actually have a big role with this team. But due to COVID hitting him early in the season, and after COVID, we don't know what happened with Hutchison. He just didn't play at all. And it's sad to see, but I love the fact that Karnisovas is like, okay, we're going to trade Hutchison for a guy that's younger, but is also a great defender like Hutchison and Troy Brown Jr. Great job by Karnisovas here. Hutchison, I'm sorry, but you had to go. And I hope he has a good career wherever he ends up. I know he's with the Wizards right now, but it's like I doubt he's going to stay there. So it's sad to see him go. Daniel Gafford, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before I wrap up the video here. Daniel Gafford is a guy that, I was always at one end of the spectrum one night and then the other end of the spectrum the other night. It's just like, there are moments with him I'm like, I love Daniel Gafford, and there are moments where I'm just like, I can't have you on the court right now. I think Gafford is a guy that a lot of Bulls fans love just because he brought that energy, right? But I think with Gafford, he can only play in like spot minutes and only against certain matchups. If you have Gafford against a guy that can shoot the 3 ball, like you're gonna be screwed. You can't have Gafford ever be guarding a big man that can shoot the 3 ball. That's just a recipe for disaster. I think Gafford is definitely a great energy guy, so you can bring him in if the team's low on energy, or you can bring him in against a guy like, let's say, Boban Marjanovic, who comes off the bench for the Mavericks. Like, that's a good time to bring in Daniel Gafford, but he is obviously not Daniel Thies when it comes to individual defense, but also team defense. And then Daniel Thies' shooting ability just makes him that much better. I know Daniel Thies is much smaller than Gafford, but I just think, again, you're just upgrading this center position drastically if you're Karnisovas. And it's such a good job by Karnisovas to get Daniel Thies for a guy like Gafford. So I will send my love to Daniel Gafford and the other Bulls players, but I do think with Gafford, it was I applaud, the front office for picking him, Garpax, because, it was a pretty good pick in the second round, but I do think that the Bulls can get a guy like Gafford anytime in the second round, really, to be honest. So that's my thoughts on the guys leaving in this in these deals. But I talked about the guys coming in. This Bulls team looks so much better, has so much more depth, much more defense, much more rebounding. So I am very happy to see what this Bulls team does, and I hope this bench unit is going to look so much better than it did in the last game and the rest, basically this entire season so far. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next Bulls video. Peace.